This is Art 154, Module 1, getting started. Before we do anything, you need to get Blender. So if you pull up a web browser and you go to www.blender.org, that'll pull up the main Blender site. We're using version 2.69. You can also click the download if you need an older version. Depending on your platform, you can see there's Windows, there's versions for 64-bit, 32-bit, Mac OS, Linux, etc. So there's a bunch of different things, and also if you want, you can find older versions if you need, if there happens to be a newer version that's available. So once you download that, double click it, install it. The installation is pretty straightforward, and we have a file that I already prepared. So you want to double click that and open it up, and we'll take a look and start to work through this and see what we have. So I already did a custom layout on this, and we'll talk about this next in later classes. But we just have this file open, and you can see that there's some different virtual Lego pieces. So before I do anything else, I want to do a save. So I'm going to do File, Save As, and I'm going to rename this to Assignment 01, so A01 _ Snyder. You can name it different ways. Usually this is the convention I usually use. Now the one thing that I don't need, but is a good thing to help you while you're keeping track of everything, is to add a 001 to it. And now if I do save as Blender file, you'll see I have 001. Now the nice thing about this is I'd recommend every 15 minutes that you save a new file. So go File, Save As, and all you do is you hit the plus. You'll notice it changes the number. Save as a Blender file, and now you have a 2. So this is a really easy way, and at any time if a file gets corrupted, you can go back and you can figure out the order. So let's look at some movement. You need a 3-button mouse, even if you're working on a Mac. You can get just any basic USB version, but you are going to require it. The reason is there's a lot of commands that require the right mouse button. So if we want to navigate the viewport, the first one is if you take the middle mouse button and you hold it down, you can rotate around the view. Now be aware that when you're in a 2D view, if you accidentally do this, you'll get the same thing. If we scroll the middle mouse button, as you would expect, we zoom in and out. And if you hold down the Shift key and move at the middle mouse button, you can basically do what's called a pan. So once again, middle mouse button, hold down middle mouse button is basically rotate view, zoom in and out with the scroll, and then hold down the Shift key and the middle mouse button at the same time. It allows you to move. So that's the basic, and you're just basically going to have to get used to doing that as far as navigating. Now there are other viewports. So if we do a hold down Control and Alt and Q all at the same time, we actually have different viewports. Now you can see that this one says perspective and these ones say ortho. Ortho means that it's 2D and perspective means that it's 3D. Now if we go to the top per se, and I hold down the Shift and the middle mouse button, you can see once again I can pan back and forth. I can scroll the middle mouse button, zoom in. Now the thing to be aware of is if I accidentally hold down the middle mouse button and move it, I rotate the view, and now you can see I have a user ortho instead of a top. Now the nice thing about this is there's shortcuts that exist. You can go down and you can do view, and you can just choose top, but you'll also see there's a little shortcut that says number pad 7. Your number pad's usually on the far right of your keyboard, and if I click this view and make it active and I hit 7, you see it automatically goes. Now this one I accidentally changed, so if I come down and click something in this viewport and I do 1, now I have the front view, and 3 is the side view. So you can actually use the keyboard to the number pad to move around pretty quickly. And also if you hit 5, it toggles on and off. You'll see it says perspective ortho, so you can use that as well. So the big thing to remember is Control Alt Q maximizes whatever view you want to work with, and then do Control Alt Q again, and then you can highlight and select another viewport, and then do Control Alt Q again, and you can maximize and minimize items. So it's a handy way to kind of move through and be aware of what's happening. Now let me, I'll just maximize the one of the viewports again. And in order to select stuff, in most programs you hit the left mouse button to select this program's a little different. You'll see if I hit the left mouse button, it actually creates this cursor, and this controls where objects are created. And we'll look at this more in the next class. What we want to do is we want to hit the right mouse button, and you can see as we're hitting the right mouse button, it's selecting different items, but it only selects one item at a time. We can't select multiple items. So what we need to do is if we hold down the Shift key, we can select more than one item, and you'll see that this one is a lighter color and those are darker colors. That means that this one is what they call the first, which is the most important, and when we look at grouping and parenting later, we can talk about what that means. But you can see that different ones become highlighted, but all of them are selected, and then if you select an object another time, it deselects. So, and if I hit A, it deselects everything, and if I hit A again, it selects everything. So if for some reason you don't like the selection you have, you can change it. So that's an easy way to do that. I'm going to hit Control Alt and Q again, and I'm going to select another viewport. Right mouse button, Control Alt Q. And the other thing I can do is if I hit the B key, I get what they call a box or border select. If I hold down the left mouse button, I can drag out a selection box, and anything that intersects with that is selected. So that's an alternate way or a different way that you can actually grab stuff. So once you get something set up and you have what you like, the next thing to do is to actually edit and move the object around. So there's two different ways to do it. You'll see if I toggle, we'll stay here. If I toggle this on and off, you'll see that there's a manipulator is what they call it in this program. Some programs call it a handle or a widget. And what you can do is you can use the different parts to move it around. Now if you look, you'll see right now the green is a Y and the X is a blue. If I do Control Alt Q, and let me maximize the perspective viewport, Control Alt Q again, and move this around and watch what happens in the lower left hand corner, you'll see that we actually have different axes. So we have an X, a Y, and a Z, and they coincide with RGB. So X comes first, red comes first, green is the second one, which is Y, and blue is the last one, which is Z. And you can see that represented in the widget. So if I hold with the left mouse button, I move this up and down, I am moving it right now up and down on the Z axis. If I hit Control Z, that'll undo it. Likewise, if I hold in this direction, you can see it's green, so that means I'm moving it on Y, Control Z. And once again, if I move it back and forth on here. Now the one thing you might know, and it's actually more obvious if we go into another viewport, is right now if I select these, you'll see that it actually snaps. So what I have enabled is if you go down here, you'll see this little snap is enabled. And what this does is this allows your Lego pieces so they actually snap on top one of another. If you don't use that, then they're going to look a little funny. For example, if I go into the right view and I pull this up and move it over, you can see that we get perfect registration of the piece. Either it's intersected or it's floating above, but we can use this as a way to line up. So there's a pre-made grill that already exists with this setup so that it's easier for you to use the Lego pieces. Now we can also rotate pieces, so we can come down here and you'll see here's an icon for rotate, and click that, and once again you can see the different axis. So this is on the x-axis, the y-axis, and then there's the z-axis as well. Once again, hold down the left mouse button and you'll see that we can rotate this back and forth. There is some snapping that's taking place. You can see there's a little bit of a grid. Eventually it'll pop to 270, those types of things. Obviously we don't want to go in that direction, but if we want to rotate a 90, once again the snapping's on. That's how you can get your pieces to rotate, and it's still locked into the grid. So you shouldn't have a problem with that. We're not going to use scaling at all, which is the next one, so don't worry about that, and don't use that one for this assignment. So you got rotate and you got move. Now the shortcut for these is every time I go to move something, let's say I'm going to move this and I want to rotate it, I got to come down here, grab the rotate, and then do the command, etc., and move it around. So this becomes a little tedious. What you can do is there's shortcuts. So G is for move, which you can think of as grab, and the instant you do that, you see all of a sudden it's moving around. The thing is you lose the little widget. So in the beginning you might just want to use the widget prior. Now right now it moves all over the place. If I hit X, it constrains it to that axis. So what you can do is if you hit G and then you hit a particular letter X, Y, or Z, it constrains it to the axis that you chose. Likewise, the same thing with rotate. Rotate, the shortcut is R for rotate. Hit that, and you can see once again we're rotating it, and by default it's going to rotate in this view. But if we decide for some reason that we want to rotate it on another axis, I just hit the X key. You can see how it does it differently. So pretty quickly you can use either technique to get it to go back and forth. And like I said, if for some reason you don't like what you did, you can hit Control Z. If you hit Shift Control Z, that will redo your last action. So let's look at some other things. One thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to be able to duplicate these different objects, and the way that we do that is we actually use, let's select the object, and then we're going to hold down Shift and D. And when that happens, you'll see that there's no difference, but if you look over, you see automatically there's this new object that's created, but it's exactly where the last one was. And another way you can tell what's happening, now if you hit the, so now we have this selected, and we move it, and we let go, and you can see here's 2x.001, because we just made one copy of it. So if I do Shift D again, let me maximize this so we can look at it, and I do Shift D again, now I can copy out the second. So, and you can see now the number is incremented up. So that's how you copy different things. You basically do a Shift, and then you hit the D key, and the thing that you have to remember is by default that the object is already hidden. Now people like to change the blocks for different Lego pieces. So the way that you do that is we're going to go over and we're going to come over to this panel here, which we haven't looked at all, and there's different types of properties, and we're going to hit this one right here, which is basically for your material. It's a little sphere, and you can see by default we have this blue material. Now I have different types of materials already made, so if I hold down this icon here, you can see I have green, red, white, and yellow. Now let's say for some reason we want to make a new material. So what we can do is I can hit plus, create a new material, and it's going to default give it the old characteristics of the old one, but you can see the name has changed. So if I click where the name is, and let's do purple, and now I have a material called purple. Go down to diffuse, which is the main color. We'll look at these other later. Click that, and now I can change this color to a purple, and if I want to make it darker, I can also change the different types, so I can crank up the saturation, drop down the value, and now I kind of have a nice purple that I'm working with. And now if I go to list, now you'll see there's blue, green, purple, red, and at any time I can go back to the blue, or I can change it to a different one, or I can go to the purple. So that's a handy way to change the colors. Everyone's going to want to change the colors during some time periods, so that's something to just be aware of and something to give consideration to. Now what I'd like you to do is once you have the model all done, you're going to want to group all the pieces together because you're going to have a final model. So I'm not going to build the model, I'm just going to show you the process for grouping. Now right now at this point, the cursor, which is when you click the left mouse button, is located right here, which is where it's going to create what they call an empty, which is basically what you're going to attach everything to. So what I want to do is I want to return that to the center of the world, which is 0, 0, 0. So the easiest way to do that is to do object and then do snap and then cursor to center, and there it goes, and it goes back. And if we do Control Alt Q and we look, you'll see that indeed it's in the center of the entire world. So now that I have that done, I'm going to add an empty. So I go up to add, this is where you add objects. You'll see there's empty, and then we're just going to choose plain axis. And you can see there's this little object that shows up. Now I want to change the name of it, and you can see right now it's called an empty. So if I right click, I can say rename, and I can call this final group, just to play around with so you can see what we're doing. Okay, so this is final group, is that object. And the other thing I can do with this is I can change some of the properties of it. So if I go and I click the little icon for getting the properties of the object and do display, I can make the name visible, and now you can see in every single viewport it says final group. Now the nice thing about that is if I go to deselect everything and I click that final group word, it automatically selects it. So it actually makes it easier to select the actual object, because you can see this is a little hard to actually get access to. Or I can click it up here with the left mouse button. So this is another way to cycle. So what we want to do is we want to make all of these